sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
A busy show tonight. We aim to entertain and inform in equal measure. In the big question, should we have more low-cost private schools to improve British education? If private schools were much cheaper, would more people go for it? And would it raise standards? We'll speak to top education author and Vice-Chancellor of Buckingham University, James Tooley, and the government's social mobility czar and legendary head teacher, Catherine Burble-Singh. I'll also be meeting Olympic gymnast and reality star Lisa Mason. Just what does it take to get to the top of an Olympic sport? In my big opinion monologue, we're going to have to keep our energy supplies British from now on. Drill, baby, drill. That's how we defeat Putin. It's all about shale, oil, and coal. And reacting to the big stories of the day are my all-star panel, lawyer and entrepreneur Rebecca Jane, and the formidable political and showbiz double act of Neil and Christine Hamilton. Or is it Christine and Neil? I'm sure she'll have something to say about that one. 2 hours of big politics, big stories, big opinions, and plenty of entertainment along the way. We've got everything for you tonight, so I'll see you after the headlines with Miranda.
Thank you. Good evening. The top stories this hour from the GB newsroom. Boris Johnson and the Irish Premier Micheál Martin have discussed the Ukraine invasion during a meeting today. They agreed on the importance of humanitarian relief, military support to the Ukrainian government and further sanctions to target Vladimir Putin's regime. Ukraine's president says 1,300 Ukrainian soldiers have now died so far in the conflict. Volodymyr Zelensky also warned Russia that it could only take the country's capital, Kyiv, if it razes the city to the ground. He also demanded the immediate release of the mayor of Melitopol after footage appeared to show him being kidnapped by Russian troops.
The demand is simple: to release him from captivity immediately. We appeal to all world leaders who speak to Moscow, France, Germany, Israel and others. I have personally called German Chancellor Olaf Scholz with French President Emmanuel Macron. I will talk to everyone to free our people.
Well, Ukraine's foreign minister says his country is ready to negotiate with Russia to end the war, but would not surrender or accept any ultimatums. The Ministry of Defence says the bulk of Putin's troops are now around 15 miles away from the centre of Kyiv. Speaking at a virtual event, Dmytro Kuleba also called for more military supplies.
If we had more planes, we would have been able to save many more human lives, mainly civilian lives, because the main striking force of Russia is in the air. And they indiscriminately choose to attack civilian infrastructure and kill our civilians.
Meanwhile, the French president is criticising the UK government's response to helping Ukrainian refugees. Emmanuel Macron says he expected better of Britain's visa policy, which requires applicants to apply in person in Brussels or Paris. The Home Office says it's making the process simpler online. The Premier League has disqualified Chelsea owner Roman Abramovich from being a director at the club. It follows sanctions by the UK government, but it won't impact the club's ability to train or play fixtures. Under the new rules, the club can't sell any new tickets or merchandise. And research from the TUC says energy bills could increase at least 14 times faster than wages this year. It says they're set to rise by 54% in April, but average weekly wages will go up by just over 3%. The government says it will be introducing a £21 billion package of support for households. Well, on TV, online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Mark Dolan tonight.
Thanks, Miranda. Aren't our bulletin teams fantastic? I'm delighted to say that Miranda returns in an hour's time. It is Saturday the 12th of March and you're listening to and watching Mark Dolan Tonight. In the big question, should we have more low-cost private schools to improve British education? If they were much cheaper, would more people go for it? Would you go for it as a parent? And would it raise standards? We'll speak to top education author and Vice-Chancellor of Buckingham University, Richard Tooley. And we'll speak to the government's social mobility czar and legendary head teacher, Catherine Burble-Singh. My Mark Meets guest is Olympic gymnast and reality star Lisa Mason. Just what does it take to get to the top of an Olympic sport? And we'll talk about her career in showbiz as well and being a social media influencer. Plus more alternative news headlines, and tonight's Great British Game Show is all about bonkers sporting terminology. What's sledging when it's at home? And reacting to the big stories of the day are my all-star panel tonight. So excited to have lawyer and entrepreneur Rebecca Jane and the formidable political and showbiz double act of Neil and Christine Hamilton. There's Neil and there is Christine, looking resplendent as ever. But the show is all about you and me. And I want to hear from you throughout the programme. So drop me a line between now and 11, mark@gbnews.uk. As it's a Saturday night, shall we have some fun? Why not uncork something cold and Spanish, or fire up the kettle and tear open the Mr. Kipling angel slices, and let's get to work. Whether we realise it or not, we are at war. We're not fighting with bullets, planes or tanks. We're fighting with pounds, euros and dollars. The cost of economic sanctions on Russia, which are necessary, are a cost to us too. Russia is an energy superpower, which provides the West with billions of pounds worth of oil, gas and coal. Of course, it's our bizarre and ruinous green policies that have led to the West's dependence on Russia's natural resources. But we are where we are. It's like that old Irish joke when someone asks an Irishman directions and he says, well, I wouldn't start from here if I were you. Whilst there is a strong humanitarian case for policing a no-fly zone over Ukraine, and it's not an easy decision, sparking World War III just isn't an option right now. Which is why I'm sympathetic to the White House's decision not to accept Poland's transfer of 28 fighter planes to the US, which would be handed over to the Ukrainians. Why? Because this could be perceived as a provocation and it could produce a global conflict by the back door. World War III by default. For now, the place to hit Putin is in his wallet. But it comes at a price, one we will all pay. If we sink our teeth into the Russian bear, some claw marks will be left on our own skin. An economic war with Russia is our least bad option. It's a conflict in which we hand over our livelihoods, not our lives. The West needs to stand up to Putin by crushing his business model, depriving him of oil and gas revenue, and working towards energy independence and strategically decoupling from despots of his ilk. However, it's easier said than done. No pain, no gain. The West, depriving itself of Putin's energy, places unprecedented pressure on supplies. Our industries are still largely based around fossil fuels, whether we like it or not. And with this action, with these sanctions, we're making it harder for us to get our hands on the stuff. So that will fuel inflation, of course it will, which many fear will hit 10% by Christmas. That's right, 10% by Christmas. And we will see household energy bills rise well beyond the 55% we are already expecting in April. It doesn't have to be this way, of course. We have 5 decades worth of shale gas beneath our feet, a clean fuel which has seen the great nation of the United States become energy independent in recent years. They can afford tough sanctions against Russia without wrecking their economy and impacting hard-working Americans. If we had adopted the sensible green policy of pursuing renewables, absolutely, let's go green, I do want to decarbonise, we should at the same time have been using the great resources of shale, coal and oil on our own shores. We should have gone for a mix. Scientifically debatable green ideology, which saw Angela Merkel dump nuclear energy in Germany, and green ideology as championed by a depressed vegan teenager in Greta Thunberg, there she is, has shaped Western energy policy. So how's that working out for you? We've learnt the hard way. Go woke, no smoke. So this economic war, which we have no choice but to wage, will hurt ordinary Brits, which is why our pathetic and expensive overreaction to the pandemic is such a national scandal and, in my view, a crime against the British people. How useful do you think the £500 billion we spaffed away on our pandemic overreaction would be right now? Imagine if we had £500 billion with which to boost our military spending so we can flex our muscles against the bully Putin and other international bad actors. £500 billion to rapidly explore our oil and gas reserves. £500 billion with which to subsidise the nation's energy bills, particularly for the poorest in our society and pensioners. It gives me no pleasure to tell you that I've pointed all of this out over the last 2 years, and I haven't stopped saying this comment ever since. I've lost friends over the last couple of years, but they clearly weren't my friends in the first place. But this has been my message since the beginning of the pandemic. How can shutting down a nation's economy on and off for 2 years to the tune of £500 billion possibly be justified to stop a virus mild for most? And stop it, of course, is something we failed to do anyway. For a year and a half, I've been saying that we haven't borrowed money on this scale since German bombs reigned over London. I've been saying endlessly that we cannot justify borrowing billions on behalf of future generations. Why? Because, and I quote, they will have their own crises to deal with. A future pandemic, potentially a worse one. A future natural disaster. Or, God forbid, a future war. My words on the national broadcast airwaves. It's all on the record. And here we are. We are at war, and we've used up all our ammunition before a shot has been fired. Well done, everyone. So it's time for an immediate push for fracking to make sure that we drill for oil in the North Sea. And I suggest we hit our coal reserves pretty damn hard too. Dig, baby, dig. We have enriched Putin for too long now and made ourselves dependent on this ruthless monster, as a result of which the free world faces its greatest peril since 1938. It's very simple, folks. Energy security is national security. Drill, baby, drill. Reacting to the big stories of the day are my fantastic panel. Christine Hamilton, broadcaster and author. Neil Hamilton, UKIP leader and former Conservative MP. And author, lawyer and presenter Rebecca Jane. Neil, if I could start with you, do you think that sanctions are our only option against Russia at this moment in time?
Well, we are arming the Ukraine, I think, pretty effectively, because without the anti-tank weapons and Stinger missiles, which the West has supplied them with, they wouldn't have been as effective in slowing the Russian advance. But as you rightly said in your Philippic a moment ago, we don't want to start World War III as well, because Putin is unpredictable, he's clearly a psychopath, and he could press the button. Who knows? He wouldn't mind destroying his own nation rather than going down in flames himself. So in the short and the long term, I think economic sanctions do offer a solution to this problem. That's pretty small comfort to the people in Ukraine at the moment. But of course, we've only had a half-hearted attempt at throttling the Russian economy so far. And it only affects a few oligarchs and political apparatchiks insofar as they've been sanctioned. Russia should be completely ostracized as a nation by the West, in my opinion. Every single Russian citizen ought to feel the pain of Putin's decisions. And so therefore they shouldn't be allowed, any of them, to travel to our countries. And any of their assets that they've got in the West should be frozen as well. We've really got to bring it home to the Russian people now, rather than in dribs and drabs over years. Yeah. Germany is talking about weaning itself off Russian gas by the year 2030. By which time I may be dead, for example.
No, God forbid.
And Putin may be dead through natural causes if he doesn't get bumped off first. Economic sanctions have got to be beefed up, and they've got to be made as effective as possible in throttling the Russian economy. But the West is still fatally divided on this. The European Union has been absolutely useless, as usual. The United States and Britain have really shown a lead here, and that's what we should continue to do.
I can live without Vladimir Putin, but Neil Hamilton is a national treasure. Long live Neil Hamilton. Rebecca Jane, we're not technically in this war, but it's already hurting us.
It is, yeah, and I think one thing that it definitely hurts us all with is the anxiety that it's created, which I don't think would have been quite as much if it hadn't have been for the last 2 years of everything that we've all gone through. But yes, it is, and and I agree with pretty much everything that Neil said there. I think that it's such a fine line, isn't it? Because I do feel like the Russian people do need to feel some effect of it. But then on the other hand, I don't think that this is a fight of the Russian people. This is one crazy person who is deluded at the top. And I think that we have to be careful to protect some of their citizens. But equally, we do have to cut them off and show that we're not going to tolerate this kind of behaviour without starting World War III.
Christine, Andrew Neil today writing in The Mail and Fraser Nelson writing in The Spectator both had the same message, which is that these sanctions are essential and that the more intensified they are, as Neil just hinted, the better, but it will impact on the British people.
Yes, of course it will. And frankly, that's just bad luck on us. It is not going to impact on us in any way similar to the war is impacting on people in Ukraine. And if we're not prepared, I know it's easy for me to say that, people will say, because I'm not at the bottom of the economic food chain. I'm not struggling to pay food or fuel. But if we can't do this, if we can't all make sacrifices to help those people in Ukraine, you've only got to look at that amazing president. And don't forget, behind him, by the way, is his incredible wife, Elena. It isn't just him. They are an incredible duo.
We know about great political duos.
Well, the Ukrainian people are it is medieval torture that's going on. It is unbelievable. None of us can believe what we're seeing. And yes, if there's a little bit of pain at this end, it is a little bit of pain compared to what Ukraine is suffering. And I think Neil said earlier, what we do have to bring home to is the ordinary Russian, because don't forget, they're getting propaganda. They're not getting proper news. We need to make sure that the ordinary Russian understands what is going on. Now, that is very, very difficult, and it will only be by sanctions hurting and people suddenly starting to say, why is McDonald's closed? Why this? Why that? Why the other? And then maybe the penny will get through.
Yes, Neil, of course, you sat in the House of Commons for many, many years as a Conservative MP, voted on multiple budgets. What's your reaction to my comments about the pandemic reaction and £500 billion spent on a virus a third of people had no symptoms from?
Well, I entirely agree with you. And at every single opportunity, I voted against the COVID regulations in the Welsh Parliament until I was liberated by the electorate last May, for precisely the same reasons as you've very eloquently adduced over the years. And, as you rightly say, £500 billion is 12 years of our defence budget. So a small fraction of that added to what we spend at the minute would significantly...
And also, Neil, should we have a point of order here?
Yeah.
Because it's not really £500 billion, is it? Because the bill for the pandemic hasn't even come in yet.
Well, this is true. There are going to be... This bill is not going to become wholly apparent for years, maybe decades to come. And there's, of course, a vast cost in terms of the nation's health and mental health as well, which is going to be a long-term, long-tail impact upon our population. We see already the way the health service is struggling to cope with the real ailments that people have got, even if they're just discomfort, orthopaedic things that need to be done, not to mention cancer patients and so on. Carol Sikora has been on this slot many times in the last couple of years, pointing that out. So yes, but if we're looking at it in purely financial terms, so much money is wasted by our governments of all persuasions. We've spent over £100 billion on this fiasco called HS2 as a project. In the COVID fiascos, track and trace cost £40 billion. £40 billion is the annual defence budget. And that was just spent on one aspect.
And it's not clear that it stopped transmission of the virus or even saved many lives.
Well, we know it didn't stop transmission of the virus any more than masks are able to do so, as we know, because a virus is sort of 500 to 1,000 times smaller than the holes in cloth masks. So there's been so much irrational nonsense surrounding the regulations which were supposed to protect the nation. Actually, they exposed us to even greater harm and have magnified the health problems of whole generations of people.
And what on earth was the cost of these ludicrous tests that everybody was doing? If you're given a free test by the government, some people were doing 2 or 3 a day.
Yeah.
It was utterly ludicrous. And the government are still spending money on advertising, telling us to wash our hands. For God's sake, get a grip. We're entering World War III, possibly, and they're still banging on about COVID. We have to live with it.
Well, Christine, I think those tests were costing the Exchequer, the Treasury, £2 billion a month.
Yeah.
Well, trust you to know the figures. It's your job. Yes, I know. It's terrifying.
Yeah. It's
utterly ludicrous.
Rebecca Jane, talking about money, and let's talk about my viewers and the fact that their energy bills are going to leap by at least 50% in April. How are working families supposed to find £500 a month to heat their homes? Should the Chancellor do something about it? Is the money there? What is the answer?
Yes. Why on earth are they so quiet about all of this? Like petrol, gas, electric, it's an absolute joke. And it's not just the working families. One of the things that I constantly think about as somebody that cares for somebody who is in her 90s and has dementia is that what on earth is going to happen with her and her bills? Because pensions aren't going up. Nothing is actually changing. And why on earth? Well, it doesn't surprise me in the slightest, actually, why on earth our government is keeping so quiet about it, because this is just what they do these days. And like I keep on saying on this programme, we've got somebody at the top of it who's completely incompetent.
Well, look, we've got so much more to come. I think you'll agree we're travelling business class with my panel tonight. So excited to have Rebecca Jane and Neil and Christine Hamilton with us tonight. Get your opinions over. Do you think that the Chancellor should be subsidising our energy bills? So far, we've been offered about £200, which is effectively a loan, by the way, that will be payable by the British public in the years to come. But how do we deal with the enormous cost of living crisis, which is only going to get worse? Mark at gbnews.uk. In our news agenda with the panel later in the show, so many great topics, let me tell you. I'll give you a sneak preview. Should we increase defence spending is one of the big topics. But next, in the big opinion, should we have more and cheaper private schools to improve education and improve social mobility? Our Twitter poll is up now. If private school was much cheaper, because it tends to cost £15,000, £20,000, £30,000 a year, if it cost £2,000 or £3,000 or £4,000 a year, as a parent, would you find that money? Would it be worth it? Would that interest you? Mark at gbnews.uk. We're going to discuss that after this.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
I'll get to your emails very shortly, but it's time now for the big question in which we tackle a major news story of the day. As schools recover from 2 years of pandemic measures, the Children's Commissioner revealed this week that almost 2 million kids in this country now regularly miss school. 2 million kids. Added to that are the tens of thousands of so-called ghost children, kids that stopped going to school as a result of lockdown and never came back. So has the pandemic broken British education? And if so, can the private sector help? Should we, for example, be building more low-cost private schools to help shoulder the burden and raise standards? Well, that's certainly the view of James Tooley, Vice-Chancellor of the University of Buckingham in England and author of Really Good Schools, Global Lessons for High-Caliber, Low-Cost Education. And I'm delighted to say that James Tooley joins us now. Hello, James.
Good to see you.
Of course, you are a teacher, so I should call you Mr. Tooley.
You can call me Professor Tooley, but you can call me James. It's much nicer.
Look at that. Imagine having that many titles. Look, Professor Tooley, let's get down to brass tacks. Are private schools better than state schools?
The simple answer is yes. And research has been done all over the world on this, in developing countries especially, where this extraordinary phenomenon, you've mentioned low-cost private schools, maybe some of our viewers don't know about these, but around the world in developing countries, in sub-Saharan Africa, in South Asia, this extraordinary phenomenon of low-cost private schools are there, where the majority, 70, 80, 85% of kids, including poor kids, are going to private schools. These private schools outperform the state schools. They're affordable to poorer parents. They're accessible to girls. They're sustainable, scalable. I've been doing research on this area for 20 odd years. And the questions come to me, why are we not doing the same in Britain? Why are we not doing the same here in England? Can we do the same? And I believe we can. And I started a low-cost private school up north in Durham when I was at Newcastle University a couple of years back. We proved the model. I think low-cost private schools can really do something to bring in better education, really good schools for more kids in this country and really transform the education system.
How low cost could a British private school be?
So the school I opened up north is £3,000 a year. That's per year, not,
By the way,
hear that and assume
interrupting you, Professor Tooley, that's cheaper than a good nursery.
it's cheaper than a good nursery, and it's 3/5 of the per capita funding that the government pours into state schools, the equivalent there. But it's also importantly
could you clarify that figure? So the cost to the taxpayer of one school place is double.
I promise you, it's about 5,000, 6,000 maybe if you include capital costs, but it's 5,000 to 6,000. So that £3,000 a year is 3/5 or even a half of what the government spends on a child in a state school. So it's an extraordinary thing. I mean, the proof of the pudding is I've done it up north, and the school there we started a couple of years back. It's now full, a very small school. Now this is full. It's got a waiting list. It's passed its Ofsted inspections with flying colours, and it's now breaking even at that amount. So we've proven that you can keep costs low and develop a private school which serves communities that other private schools don't reach. Now, other private schools, remember, are maybe 5 times more expensive, maybe 6 or 7 times more expensive. So this is an extraordinary, if you like, proof of concept. I want to see this developing further across England, across America, and so on. And people are getting interested. I've written about this, and people are contacting me and saying, well, perhaps we can do this. Perhaps this is a way of solving the education problems. Because you mentioned those lost children from the, I enjoyed what you're saying in your monologue about the pandemic. I agree with you 100% there. Private schools at least kept up with their children when they were under lockdown in a much better way than state schools did. So private schools are accountable to parents. Private schools have so many virtues. What I want to see is extending the reach of private schools to a much broader audience, and bringing the virtues of the private sector to a much wider clientele. That can happen. We've proven it up in the Durham model. I want to see it happening down here as well, down south where I am now.
You mentioned accountability, of course. If a parent pays for private education, even if it's £3,000 a year, they are paying customers. So accountability, a key factor. But why else might the culture of a private school, even a low-cost private school, be more effective at educating children than a state school? What is the difference culturally?
Well, I mean, I think the accountability is a key part of the X factor that makes private education better. So I can talk about children their parents who send children to that school up north, and also the experience I've had working in low-cost private schools for 20-odd years in Africa and Asia. And it's really the parents know that the schools will respond to the way they want their children to be educated. You know that phrase, isn't it? That schools are there in locus parentis. That's the whole point of schools. They are there to look after the children while the parents are not there. So often in the state schools, I'm sure you know many examples of this. The state schools push stuff onto children that their parents don't want. And private schools can be accountable in a way that state schools cannot. So many parents have said to me something along the lines of, yeah, the state schools are fine. In this country, the state schools are not too bad. Whereas in other countries I'm working in, the state schools are terrible. But they might say the state schools are fine for other children. But my little Lucy, she has special, she's specially bright. She's specially gifted. She needs special help. My little Johnny, he's perhaps slower and needs special attention. And parents recognize that you don't get that in the state schools in the way that you can in a private education. So accountability is the X factor, because it really makes sure that the schools go after what the parents want and satisfy their needs, rather than getting caught up in some dogma or some fad, educational fad that governments so often want to put onto schools.
I'm sure that notwithstanding the current challenging economic environment, I must have many thousands of viewers watching this who have kids that would bite your hand off for a private school place for what amounts to less than £300 a month per child. I mean, let's be honest, Sky Sports subscription and Sky Movies will cost you 60 quid. You could give that up for starters. Why are traditional private schools in this country so expensive? And might that be a disincentive for the kind of low-cost private educational establishments?
Yeah, I mean, that's a question I often ask. I get people from private education independent schools coming to visit me in my office here in Buckingham, and they will say, they'll say, how do you do it? And I say, well, why can't you do it? Where is your expense? And so often, I think it's twofold, really. One is that often private schools, normal private schools, normal independent schools, they're in very old buildings with magnificent estates. Someone came to see me recently from a school somewhere in the Midlands, which had 90 acres of land, and a magnificent old building. Well, those are very expensive to maintain. Do you need 90 acres of land to educate 200 children? You absolutely do not. The other thing is, and this is quite relevant to the discussion now about who's using expensive private schools, are they children of Russian oligarchs or whatever, but there has been this international arms race of the private schools catering for a global volatile, fluid market. And so they think they've got to have, astro pitches. They've got to have astroturf pitches. They've got to have Olympic-sized swimming pools. They've got to have magnificent theatres. And they focus on those things which are peripheral to education, rather than focusing on the essentials. Our school up north focuses on the essentials. It's a beautiful school, a beautiful building. We rent the building. And it caters to the educational needs of the children, not to those additional fripperies, if you like to call it that.
There you go. I'm just suddenly imagining the idea of a Primark primary, a low-value but high-quality educational establishment. I'm sure that your place is several rungs above the Primark ladder. Let's bring, can we, James, my panel into this. We have lawyer and broadcaster Rebecca Jane. We also have Neil and Christine Hamilton. I'm going to be very personal and ask each and every one of you about your educational background, if you're comfortable answering that. So, Christine, did you go to private school or state school?
Well, both. I started out, after sort of kindergarten and little schools, I started out at an all-girls public school, which was incredibly strict, and it won't come as any surprise to you that I was expelled. And I then went to.
Do you care to tell us the circumstances surrounding your expulsion?
Not actually terribly interesting. I mean, I was only 12. I was just very naughty. Anyway,
I don't want to embarrass Neil, but I wonder if boys were involved.
Amazingly, they weren't. I said I was 12, Mark. 12.
Well, you can still give a boy a peck on the cheek, but I understand. So
we hardly ever saw boys, for goodness sake. We were cooped up 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Little crocodiles to church with little white gloves. I mean, no wonder I rebelled. Anyway, then I went to a co-educational grammar school and I never looked back. But having had both experiences, I think it was very formative. I wouldn't have missed either because both sorts of school taught me a great deal. And I then rebelled again when A-levels came along and I said to my parents, I've had enough of school. If you don't let me go and do my A-levels at a technical college, then I ain't doing them. And they knew by then that the immovable object had spoken. So I then went to a technical college. So I've had a sort of a variety, and then university. So I've had the lot, really.
And what do you think about the idea of more low-cost private schools charging £3,000 a year for a pupil place?
I think it's amazing, and I don't know how Professor Tooley does it. He explained slightly by jettisoning the sort of 90,000 acres, but I still don't quite know how he does it. But focusing on what is important, exactly. You can do extracurricular swimming lessons and things like that, but focusing on the really important pillars of proper basic education. But, I mean, hats off to do it for that price. I'd love
Christine,
to actually...
Do you think that another reason why, according to James, private schools are better, notwithstanding the facilities and very sort of engaged, motivated parents is a lack of politics within the classroom in the private sector.
I'm sure. I think the word is ethos, isn't it? The ethos in a private school. And let's actually, can I just say, I should have said this right at the beginning, there are some amazing state schools, absolutely amazing state schools, and there are some pretty appalling private schools. So let's not tar everybody with the same brush. But yes, the ethos in general tends to be different at a private school.
Rebecca Jane, you're obviously educated to within an inch of your life, letters after your name, dripping in qualifications. Did you go to private school?
No. No, I went to state school. I went to Church of England High School, which did me no good, really, if I'm honest. But no, I'm not into the private school argument, I'm afraid. And also, so I was obviously paying a lot of attention, but I did get rather confused when we were talking about the figures and whatnot. So it's £3,000 per year per child. And are we saying that it costs £6,000 per child in a normal school?
If you're asking me that question,
Yes, please.
Yeah. So that it's £5,000 or £6,000 that the government puts into what you're calling a normal school, a state school. So obviously the parents don't pay that, but that money comes in.
Yes.
And,
okay.
In the school that I'm running up north, we can do it for £3,000. Down south, Christine, it'd probably be a bit more expensive.
Right.
Rents are more expensive here. It might go up to 5 or 5.5, something like that. But,
okay, so that's what I thought my understanding was. So for me personally, I don't think that throwing money at the problem and getting parents to pay is the answer. I think that
Rebecca Jane, we pay already.
We pay, yes, but then I don't think that parents should be paying on top of that as well. I think the parents have got enough to be paying out for. And I think that if we're saying that the schooling system that we have is not so wonderful, and actually it can be better and it can be more wonderful if we send them to this £3,000 a year school, then really we should be looking at our schooling system and saying, do you know what, if they're doing it for cheaper and they're doing it better, we need to look at actually our state schools and how we can actually help do it better.
Rebecca Jane, what about a tax rebate for anyone sending their kid to a low-cost private school? So you pay £3,000 in and you get £3,000 back from the Treasury.
Yeah, potentially a decent idea. But the thing is that if you can do it so well on £3,000 a year, then surely if we look at the educational system that we've got, we can save the whole educational system money and we can invest that into other things.
Yes, but the trouble with the state sector is that you've got the dead hand of government. That is the problem, whereas in the private sector, you don't. That is the crucial difference.
Neil Hamilton, you served under Margaret Thatcher. You were the Member of Parliament for Tatton from 1983 to 1997. Mrs Thatcher would have admired James Tooley and would have supported his project, wouldn't she?
Yeah, I think very much so. And I've been a long-term proponent of education vouchers, which is where parents can withdraw from the state system if they wish and get a voucher to the value of the average cost of the education of children in the school to which they would otherwise be sent. And they can use that towards a school like Professor Tooley's or any other school to give their children the education of their choice, not the one which is imposed upon them by local education bureaucrats or subject to the whims of trade unions. And what we're talking about here, of course, is taking away from people the freedom to choose for themselves by taxing them so that they no longer have the ability to contract out of the state system because the state has taken such a big proportion of their income to start with that the freedom which they would otherwise be able to afford is no longer open to them. And I've been an advocate of this for many, many years. I stood in the 1979 general election on a policy of introducing education vouchers, and it was a great source of disappointment to me that the Thatcher government didn't take that up. Mrs Thatcher was very, very tempted by that, but Kenneth Baker, who was then the Education Secretary in the Great Education Reform Act in 1985, did introduce some very welcome reforms to the state system to give more power to parents to determine the policy of the local school. All that has been put in reverse in recent years. So I think that what Professor Tooley is advocating is the way forward to improve British education, because although there are some excellent state schools, obviously we know that from the Ofsted results, and reports. But there are too many schools that are substandard and fail the children whom they're responsible for. And if a child's education is ruined right at the start, that's going to have long-term repercussions throughout his life. And therefore, it's vitally important, I think, that we put power back where it belongs, in the hands of the parents, rather than education bureaucrats.
And Neil Hamilton, you might sound like a right posho, but you are a state-educated young man. You attended Aman Valley Grammar School in Ammanford.
Yeah, indeed I did. And it was an old-fashioned grammar school because I lived in a time which is a very long time ago. It was a very traditional kind of school. Education in those days was a very different kettle of fish from what we see today. And today, of course, with new technology, so many more opportunities are there than existed in my day. But we got along very well. I'm also overeducated. I've got 3 degrees and in different subjects and 2 master's degrees. I'm an academic, but there are lots of kids who are not basically academic, and they don't even get the groundings of education, the basic groundings in reading, writing, and arithmetic, as we used to call it. And the PISA results, the OECD international comparisons, which Britain participates in, show that the parts of this country, like Scotland and Wales, that have socialist-based education systems, produce the worst results. And so the people who have send their children to schools in these areas are being failed by the system. And therefore we need to democratise the system, put power back into the hands of the people who do actually pay for it at the end of the day, the taxpayers themselves.
I feel like the people that really need it the most and the ones that are in the most struggling schools will be the people that can't afford to pay anything towards it.
But they can be subsidised.
I agree with that.
You subsidise the person, not the product.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think about that, Rebecca Jane, the idea of privatising British education so that everyone has access to it and it's based upon ability to pay?
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think that the whole problem that we've got is that we have these set structures and we pigeonhole children into certain boxes and say, this is how they should be and this is what they should do. Every single child is individual. And I say this as somebody that goes into schools every week and does a programme with children right now. And it is a programme that is designed to specifically bring out life skills to each individual child, because you can't keep pigeonholing kids into it. I've got my own youngest daughter, Peaches, absolutely adorable, but she is highly dyslexic. And I will say that she is in a state school. They've done absolute wonders for her, and I couldn't speak more highly of them. But that was after it was identified as a problem. She got pulled out, and then we completely tailored the journey towards her. Before that, they were trying to put a square peg in a round hole, and it doesn't work. So the whole system, for me, does need to have a rethink about it. And I think that what you said about the educational vouchers and giving tax rebates, I think that'd be a really good way for parents to have the choice of what kind of school that their child should go to and what is important for that child, rather than just shoving them all into the same box.
Full disclosure, I attended private school. My kids go to the local state school and the teaching they get is first class. It's unbelievably good. But that's not the picture across the country, James. How do you respond to what the panellists have just said?
And you didn't ask me for my full disclosure.
Well, yeah, that's a good point, James. Tell us your background.
Yeah, I went to a state comprehensive school in East Bristol. So I grew up in the state system so I don't come from a position of private school privilege, if you like. I don't want people to go through the system that I went through. And I want other things. No, I was very impressed with the discussion because, Rebecca, you started saying, absolutely not, you don't think this is any good. And then when given the examples of a tax credit or a voucher and the choice that can come and the way private schools will not put square pegs into round holes, but will cater to the individual, I think you sort of became convinced maybe this is a possible way forward. So I'm greatly excited by your response. You've mentioned Margaret Thatcher. I'm obviously at the University of Buckingham, where Margaret Thatcher came and gave our opening speech, where she talked about the virtues of independence and freedom. I want to see that really come into the school system. Margaret Thatcher did under Sir Keith Joseph try to get some voucher system going, and she couldn't get it past the unions and what's now the Department for Education. The beauty of my proposal is we don't wait for government to say, we'll privatise the system, we'll bring in vouchers. What I want to do is have 5, 6, 10, 15, 20 of these low-cost schools so that people like you, Mark, can come and say, look, we're doing it a bit today, but this is when it gets a bit bigger, you can say, look, people are already voting with their own feet. It's engaged in grassroots privatization, not top-down, but bottom-up. And what I've seen overseas, I've just said that earlier, in India and Nigeria, the vast majority of kids have done this grassroots privatization. They privatize themselves, or their parents have, and the state school is withering on the vine. And that's what I'd like to see here. So we'd have to wait around for politicians to say, oh, we can't do that. It's too difficult to get past the unions. The DfE won't allow it. We'll just do it. We'll just do it. And this independent revolution, if you like, will prove its worth, and the politicians will follow us rather than we have to convince them first. That's my ambition.
And Professor Tooley, what a great advocate you are. What a great advert you are for a state-educated system. Of course, you went to a comprehensive, although you said it had its shortcomings. Your book is out now. It's called Really Good Schools, Global Lessons for High-Caliber, Low-Cost Education, and it is by Professor James Tooley. James, thank you so much for joining us. More from my panel very shortly indeed. We're going to be discussing whether or not we need to spend more on defence. But the results are in of our Twitter poll about education. Should we have more and cheaper private schools to lift standards and to improve social mobility? And so 43.5% say yes, we do need more private schools to improve education. 56.5%, a majority say no, we do not. So, coming up, have we got to get rid of gas-guzzling cars? Is it time to get rid of that SUV? Also, we'll be talking about whether we should spend more on defence. And don't forget, my Mark Meets guest at 10 o'clock is Lisa Mason, Olympic gymnast and reality TV star. She's in the studio. Can't wait for that. Plus, another great British game show, alternative news headlines, and much, much more. See you shortly.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows. Every day, we ask the questions that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Gilbert, brilliant show, mate, brilliant panel. Rebecca is a darling. I would rob banks for her. What about that? Quite the offer.
How much is he getting?
Well, look,
I'm in on that.
A few 50-quid notes out of the till, we'll take that. How about this from Olive? Dear Mark, what about those of us who have been left with no choice but to home educate? We don't get any tax relief. And Olive, I think you most certainly should. How about this from Avril? Hi, Mark. My children's happiest times were in private school. The government should give the allocated monies for their children's place in state schools to the parents to contribute for private school. They should be given a choice. When my children were at school, it was about 7K per year for each child to state schools. It would free up places. Thank you, Avril, for that. I'll get to more of your emails shortly. But move out of the way, Extinction Rebellion. The tyre extinguishers are the latest eco-nutters to take to the streets, with their mission being to make it impossible to own an SUV in the world's urban areas. What's an SUV? A sports utility vehicle, one of those Chelsea tractors, a 4x4. The Eco Group took to major cities over the past 2 weeks using lentils to pop tyres and wildly proclaiming air pollution is, wait for it, racist. Imagine being a multiple sclerosis sufferer from Bristol's Surprise when she was met with this terrifying letter on her car informing her, attention, your gas guzzler kills. We have deflated one or more of your tyres. You'll be angry, but don't take it personally. It's not you, it's your car. Outrage. Surely that's criminal damage. So should we ditch our big cars to save the planet? Rebecca, you are a lawyer.
That actually is criminal damage.
Yeah. And it's a theme of the pandemic, which is, even if we're going to be terribly obnoxious to you, it's for your own good.
It's full of ego, isn't it? And how dare they use the word racism in there? Like, because you completely and utterly demean all meaning behind that word when you trivialise it with nonsense like this.
Well, the reason they say it's racist because it's white people who generally own these gas guzzler cars, and it's non-whites who live in the urban areas which are mostly affected by the pollution they cause. As I understand it, that's why they're racist.
Well, all tyres...
Not my view.
Yeah, but this is the boy that cried wolf, isn't it?
I just think it's unbelievable. As Rebecca said, how dare these people take... It is criminal damage. How dare they decide...
Most tyres are racist, aren't they? They're all black, as far as I can tell.
Very good point.
They have no idea why somebody has got one of these cars. Absolutely no idea at all. They may be taking 3 or 4 children around, etc.
The lady with, what did she have wrong with her? Was it multiple sclerosis?
And exactly. They don't know what is behind the tyre they're letting down. Exactly. They have absolutely no idea how they're going to damage somebody. It's extraordinary. And I want to see some of them made incredible examples of. Just bang them up.
But with people going around in electric cars, paying over the odds for electric cars, which produce fewer emissions, well, 0 emissions, really, why is it that others get to pollute the air with impunity, Neil?
Yeah, well, it's absurd. And the electricity has to be made to power electric cars. And as we know, in this country, about 40 to 50% of our electricity is actually fuelled by gas, which is a fossil fuel.
So an electric car is fuelled by fossil fuel, ultimately.
And it's all nonsense anyway, because if you think that carbon dioxide is a pollutant and is the cause of global warming, which I don't, but if you do think that, Britain is almost irrelevant in this because we produce 1% of the world's CO2. China produces 30%. They're paying absolutely no attention whatsoever to the green agenda. So what we've been doing by making our energy more expensive in this country is to outsource our most energy-intensive industries like aluminium making, concrete manufacture, glass manufacture. And this is all going to countries like China or India, whose emission standards are far, far worse than ours. So it's perverse.
But, darling, it makes us feel good. It makes us feel good, and we can say that we're doing the right thing, and we just close our minds to the fact that on the other side of the world...
Well, there you go. Are you ready to ditch your 4x4, Mark at gbnews.uk? In a couple of minutes' time, my Mark Meets guest is an amazing, inspirational young woman. She's very bendy too. Lisa Mason, Olympic gymnast and reality TV star. Also, the queen of US showbiz and royal reporting, Kinsey Schofield. More trouble for Alec Baldwin, and the queen won't meet her granddaughter. We'll get reaction stateside. Plus, after this, my alternative news headlines. We've got another game show and more from Neil, Christine and Rebecca. See you shortly.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
On education, Caroline says, "Hi Mark, the best school I went to was St John's School. In Cyprus, it was a military school and had streaming. These were 14 streams in each year, and according to exam results, children were able to go up or down the educational level. One year I went up 2 streams as I did well in my exams. When we left Cyprus, I attended Church of England secondary modern schools and comprehensive schools and ended up going to 10 different schools as my father kept getting posted. Some military children went to private boarding schools, but my siblings and I did not. My nieces attend Chetham's Music School in Manchester. It's a private education school, and one niece is a top violinist." Well, congratulations to your niece. You've got quite the educational CV there, Caroline. On home education, Anne says, "Mark, I do not believe in home education. Even though I trained as a teacher, I do not have the skills to fully educate a child to 11, let alone secondary level. I think they're actually holding back their child or children and reducing their child's future opportunities." And briefly on Russia and gas and energy independence, in my view, we've got to punish Russia. We've got to hit Putin where it hurts. That's his wallet. But it is going to cost the British people too. But my view is that energy security is national security. But Joseph disagrees. Dear Mark, come on. Blaming Putin for our energy woes is pretty poor. Neither Putin nor the Saudis or Chinese attended Glasgow for COP26 or forced us to sign up to net zero. If the West is daft enough to impoverish her citizens, how is that Putin's fault? The fault lay in the UK and Boris, a morally bankrupt chancellor who wrote one thing in the Telegraph and is doing the complete opposite in power. Thank you very much for that, Joseph. It is all about opinions. I'll get to yours very shortly. We've got my alternative news headlines in 2 minutes' time, plus my star guest, an Olympic legend. Find out more after the headlines with Miranda.
Thank you, Mark. Good evening. I'm Miranda Shunker in the GB newsroom. Boris Johnson and the Irish Premier Micheál Martin have discussed the Ukraine invasion during a meeting today. They agreed on the importance of humanitarian relief, military support to the Ukrainian government and further sanctions to target Vladimir Putin's regime. Ukraine's president says 1,300 Ukrainian soldiers have now died so far in the conflict. Volodymyr Zelensky also warned Russia that it could only take the country's capital, Kyiv, if it razes the city to the ground. He also demanded the immediate release of the mayor of Melitopol after footage appeared to show him being kidnapped by Russian troops.
The demand is simple: to release him from captivity immediately. We appeal to all world leaders who speak to Moscow: France, Germany, Israel and others. I have personally called German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. I spoke with French President Emmanuel Macron. I will talk to everyone to free our people.
Well, Ukraine's foreign minister says his country is ready to negotiate with Russia to end the war, but would not surrender or accept any ultimatums. The Ministry of Defence says the bulk of Putin's troops are now around 15 miles away from the centre of Kyiv. Speaking at a virtual event, Dmytro Kuleba also called for more military supplies.
If we had more planes, we would have been able to save many more human lives, mainly civilian lives, because the main striking force of Russia is in the air. And they indiscriminately choose to attack civilian infrastructure and kill our civilians.
Protesters gathered outside Downing Street earlier, urging the UK government and NATO to close the skies over Ukraine. The protest was organised by a Ukrainian campaign group, and the hundreds of demonstrators carried Ukrainian flags and held placards saying sanctions do not stop bombs. The Premier League has disqualified Chelsea owner Roman Abramovich from being a director at the club. It follows sanctions by the UK government, but it won't impact the club's ability to train or play fixtures. Under the new rules, the club can't sell any new tickets or merchandise. And research from the TUC says energy bills could increase at least 14 times faster than wages this year. It says they're set to rise by 54% in April, but average weekly wages will go up by just over 3%. The government says it will be introducing a £21 billion package of support for households. Well, on TV, online and DAB plus radio, this is GB News. Now let's get straight back to Mark Dolan tonight.
So much more coming on tonight's show. In my news agenda, we'll have a look at whether the government should spend more on defence. That is the view of former Cabinet Minister Jeremy Hunt. So we'll get to that very shortly. Plus, my Mark Meets guest is a star Olympic gymnast. Can't wait for that. So much more to come on Mark Dolan tonight. It's time now for my alternative news headlines. And let's kick off with this one, shall we? And what a story, folks. Gary Lineker has been embarrassed by this historic tweet about former Commons Speaker John Bercow. Let's have a look at the tweet. This is from 3 years ago. Takes guts to stand up to the bullying, intimidating side of our press, knowing that their wrath and revenge could ensue. Well played, Mr. Bercow, for standing up to the bullies. Well, that's awkward because Bercow has now been banned from the House of Commons for, wait for it, bullying. Mr. Lineker has previous on this, backing the wrong horse in the race. In the past, he has sided with none other than the school caretaker from Scooby-Doo. Always backs him up. He's backed Jedward in the past. Fatal mistake. And even, apologies for anyone offended by this, he has backed up the I newspaper's Benjamin Butterworth. How could you? Criminal. Staying on music now, and we reveal last night that pop sensation Robbie Williams now has grey hair, according to the Mail newspaper. That's right, he's got grey hair. Well, here on Mark Dolan tonight, we've got some more exclusive access to before and after photos. So here's the before shot. Take a look. Great looking guy. An absolute dish, isn't he? Well, here's the after photo. Wow. Science gone crazy. Staying in the world of music, and the talented songwriter Ed Sheeran has been accused of plagiarism, literally stealing music from another writer. Now, I hope this isn't true, because then the best thing about him would be his red hair. Now, I'm going to speak up for the guy because I don't think it's possible. Who on earth would steal that over-romantic, syrupy rubbish? Oh, yes, I know. Probably him. Moving on to sport, and the former Wimbledon tennis ace, the great Boris Becker, is in hot water. Boris Becker is going to be helped by German translators, that's right, German translators, when he stands trial for hiding assets after being made bankrupt. Of course, he's not the first sports star to do this. Wayne Rooney has been using an interpreter for years. There's trouble in paradise, folks. Vladimir Putin's desk has shrunk. That's right, the desk has shrunk. The evil Russian dictator, currently holding the world to ransom with an appalling assault on Ukraine, appears to have a problem with the size of his table. He has previously been photographed at some of the largest desks known to man. Here's one. Look at that beauty. And here's another. Well, that's our idea. If you're shopping around for desk ideas, then the team here at Mark Dolan tonight have got some other suggestions for Putin. How about this? Here it comes. You're going to love this one. There he is, back to school. What a good student. How about this one? Oh, that'll do. I'm sure he's got a very good backhand. Or how about this one? Perhaps this is order of the day. Nicely done. He's got the X factor. Now, the former glamour model Katie Price is in the news. This plastic surgery-loving reality star is abroad celebrating her 13th boob job. That's right, her 13th boob job. I've got to say, I'd like to have the old Katie back. But after all that plastic surgery, most of the old Katie is in a skip in Harley Street. Back to those before and after photos of Robbie Williams. Here's the before. What a good-looking guy, great hair. And here's the after. Ancient. The Mail report that lab-grown meat considered the future of farming will not be suitable for vegans as it requires the blood cells of baby cows. The vegans were going to launch a campaign against this practice, but in the end, they just didn't have the energy. One last look at Robbie Williams and that new grey hair. Here's the before. True rock star. What a legend. And after? I can wait. Scotland the Brave. Okay. And those are your alternative news headlines. It's time now for Mark Meets, in which I speak to the biggest names in the world of politics, sport, showbiz and beyond, as well as those who simply have a big story to tell. And my guest tonight has it all. Lisa Mason is a British gymnast who has competed for her country at the Commonwealth Games, European Championships, World Championships and the Olympic Games. She was the vault champion at the 1998 Commonwealth Games and was part of the first Great Britain women's artistic gymnastics team to qualify for the team events at the Olympic Games. Having resigned at the tender age of 19, Lisa made a stunning comeback in her early 30s, winning numerous national titles and being invited to world trials for the Great Britain team. Lisa has also talked about the dark side of the sport that she loves, bravely calling out serious physical and mental abuse within British gymnastics. Lisa also made quite the splash when she starred in the reality show Celeb X in the City. I've been auditioning for that one for years. They've got my details on file. Lisa is also a gymnastics coach and a choreographer, as well as being a sports model and a stunt double, something we've also got in common. What a career, with plenty more to come. I'm delighted to say that Lisa Mason joins me now. Hi, Lisa.
Hi.
What a treat to meet you.
And you.
When did you first get into gymnastics? How old were you? Can I just apologise? I've got a few bottles of Russian vodka under the desk.
Oh, that's where they
Yeah,
were.
it just helps me get through the show. Tell me when you first got into gymnastics.
I was 5, actually. I was caught climbing on my house roof at the age of 5 with my troublesome brothers, and my mother decided to sign me up to gymnastics classes to channel my energy. So,
yes. And was that a good move?
Definitely. It definitely took it out of me. I had a natural knack for it. My coach at the time saw my potential and, quickly moved me to a gymnastics club that was a little bit more advanced and dealt with elite gymnastics. So,
how important is a good head for heights in a gymnast?
I mean, I don't.
I guess it's instinctive to you. It's like asking Lewis Hamilton if he minds going fast in a car, right?
I know. I mean, you've got to have, a little bit of self-confidence and. It's mind over matter. I think this is why we start so young, because there's no fear when you're younger, and as you get older,
because I wouldn't
think.
It's implicit to you. I couldn't. The idea of throwing myself around the place, even on my wedding night, it's too much. I couldn't do it. I did the jump, which is that Channel 4 winter sports show, and I was absolutely terrified.
Oh, that looked so much fun. I would have loved to have done that.
Of course, you would have. You'd have won it. You'd have crushed Spencer Matthews, who ultimately won. So you were 5, and you got into it pretty quickly, did you? I mean, was it like pushy parents, or were you the one that embraced it?
No, my mum and dad were never pushy. It was something. It kind of just snowballed because I had a natural talent for it. I was kind of doing, strong hours as a young girl. I think from the age of 10, it was very much, okay, we could potentially make the Olympic team. So the hours started, and then there was, moves to live with my coach and, do home education, if you will, instead of going to school. So it's something I always I knew that I wanted to do it. So
it came. Your mum introduced you to it at 5, but it came from you.
Yeah. I think like I said, it was something I was naturally good at. I was never scared of heights and of flipping and trying new things. I was very much, if I saw someone do something, I'd be like, I can do that, and I would just try it. So I think it was just a progression of, okay, well, this girl actually has talent. So,
and if you start at 5, I mean, you were on the roof at 5 anyway with your brothers, but if you start that early, it acclimatises you to any peril, I would have thought.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is this pushing too early from such a young age, and, maybe I was probably doing too many hours, at a young age. But that's how it was back then. So it was a very different time. Whereas now, girls that age or guys that age are not pushed to do so much at such a young age. So, coming out of, the Nadia Comaneci era, when everyone looked at these gymnasts as tiny little things and little Polly Pockets, and everyone aspired to be like that. So that's kind of why they pushed young girls at such a young age and overtrained them to keep them small. Whereas now, understanding the sport more, having more science behind it.
Rather than quackery.
Yes, like, okay, well, if, you need to lose weight, you just don't eat. Whereas now there's a lot more, people that are there that understand everything. So there's more support and... Yeah.
And you were pushed at, perhaps it was a different era, perhaps over-pushed slightly, and you talked about some of the downsides of your experience as an athlete. I know you're very positive about the whole experience, but, there's an important, amount of reflection needed for what you and many of your colleagues went through.
Yeah.
What might have been the downsides to being over-pushed when you were young? Could you say now, could you identify what the issues were with long hours and too much training? Were you just tired, or was it a mental thing?
I think more, do you know what? If I'm honest, I think more so you're kind of in these scales of, I kind of gave up my childhood, if you will, where my friends were always out and, doing what kids do. I was training 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. Would I change it? no, because of the experience that I got from doing that has given me so much more in life. I think there's a very fine line, especially within sports like gymnastics or diving, where, you know, you can compete at the Olympic Games at such a young age. And, you know, there's this mentality of you want to push them to be the best that they can be. But there's always that, are you pushing them because you're that egotistical coach that wants that for them because it makes you look good? Or are you pushing yourself? And I just think to understand that kind of adult mindset of understanding what you want, it's hard to have that as a child, you know? And I think that's, for me, has always been like the main thing with the whole dark side of gymnastics is I think there needs to be more, what's the word I'm looking for?
Duty of care?
Yeah, I think there needs to be an allowance of recognising that gymnasts don't need to be like this, and actually you can be a woman and you can have a woman's body shape and do the skills that you can do, because you're constantly told, well, you're fat if you've got, you know, boobs or a bum, you know, in gymnastics especially. So I feel like understanding that, and especially with the NCAA, they, you know, have adapted the equipment, they embrace women's bodies, they, you know, they help them move forward in a longer career. And that is happening, and we're seeing that, which is amazing. But there still needs to be, you know, a little bit more of that kind of, oh yeah, it's acceptable for you to have a woman's body shape and still be able to do the things that you could do.
And perhaps a little bit more of a work-life balance for these young athletes too,
Yeah.
where sometimes the trainer says, actually, do go to that party.
Yeah, well, that's it as well. You know, I think COVID especially has shown so many people that actually you can take these girls out of a gym for a few weeks at a time and they can come back with the right training and the right preparation and the support. They can come back and still do it.
Yeah.
Just having 2 weeks off of the gym is not, you know, career breaking. So I think that has been the upside of COVID within the gymnastics world.
But it's been a useful experiment.
Yes.
To show that if you keep your nutrition right, and of course you can do body weight exercises, and
you can maintain your body. You can stay flexible. You can stay strong.
Oh, I mean, I didn't stop. I didn't stop doing it for 2 years. Look at me now.
There you are.
You're welcome. I mean, what about? Because I want to get onto all the positives and all the victory and everything. But you know, you've been a great role model. I mean, a great champion. But also, you have spoken out about some of the excesses of what you went through, and it was a very brave thing to do, because then others who felt the same were able to speak out.
Yes.
So you must be very proud of that. What were some of the low points for you? I mean, obviously some of it's retrospective, isn't it? You look back and go, oh, wait a minute, I didn't have a childhood. So at that point, I guess the damage is done. But at the time, did you go through particular issues that now have stayed with you?
No, I think, if I'm really honest, I was probably one of the lucky ones. I've always been quite outspoken. I think a lot of my coaches can agree with that.
You gave as good as you got.
Definitely. I would always stand up and speak out. So I wasn't, I guess, I don't know if the word is targeted in that way. So I've always been very well spoken. Again, as I said before, you know, my era was very different. That was like the norm. However, I knew and recognised that this stuff still does happen in this day and age. And that's why I needed to speak up and say, you know what,
this culture, a bit like Me Too in Hollywood, this culture has to be zero tolerance.
Yeah.
And there are many opportunities for these trainers to target girls. I mean, what might that look like? How would it manifest itself, targeting? Who are they looking for? What do they do?
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily targeting as such. It's just something that it's always just been that way, because it was taught the old Soviet way, and you know, that's how you do it. That's how you make champions. Yeah. Like I said, when I first started my career, that's how it was. So understanding so much more now and having, you know, like I said, science and things behind it, it's a different world, but there was still, you know, a large proportion of people in the gymnastics world that were like that. However, there was a lot of coaches that I've seen firsthand that have been very much that way in the old days, but they have adapted, they have changed, they have grown, and they have learned, and they've taught themselves that actually that way I was taught is not the right way. And they are better in themselves and they're becoming better coaches.
And I'm sure you had some fabulous coaches. Look at the success you had, and you know it was overall a very positive experience.
Yeah.
But it's not good, is it, either, for these coaches to have too much power?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, I don't want to say pressure on a coach. And gymnastically, I think back in the day you were everything as a coach. You know, you were a nutritionist, you were a physio, you were
taxi driver.
Yeah, everything. And in a lot of occasions, yes, you would live with your coach. I would live with my coach for a long time.
How old were you when that happened?
I was probably around 11, I think.
And I'm sure that, you know, in that case, there was no cause for concern.
No.
I guess looking back on it, your parents were quite brave, really. Not everyone in this day and age would go for that, knowing what we know now about some of the risks.
Yeah, well, I think, like I said, it was a very different time then. And, you know, in order to have this, you know, goal at the end, that yes, you can actually go to the Olympics and you can be the best Britain's had at that time. And my parents wanted the best for me. They knew that I had it.
Was it a bit like
there.
boarding school, effectively? Was it Monday to Friday?
Yeah, I was doing 6 days a week, 8 hours a day. So.
And it's because you trained so much and the facilities were close to where your trainer was based.
Yeah.
So it was a practical solution.
Yeah, basically.
Amazing. And look, here you are. You've got this amazing CV. First of all, before we get to the medals, what does gymnastics, what has it done for you? When you're flying through the air like that, you're upside down, your legs are all over the place, you've got this amazing technique, you know. Emotionally, what's it giving to you?
It's like, I guess, like an adrenaline rush, isn't it? You know, people like to jump out of aeroplanes. I like to do flips.
So it is a buzz for you, like a healthy drug.
Yeah. Being able to do things that I guess normal people can't, you know, is quite freeing. And I think that for me, you know, having two separate careers in two different decades, you know, it's made me feel like, you know, there shouldn't be limitations because of your age.
Well, you retired at 19 and went back at 31?
Yes.
Just amazing. And what was behind that gap? Was it injury?
No, I was done. I had a baby, and I was asked to do, because I was doing, you know, a lot of sports modelling and stunt work, and I was asked to do the show at the London Olympics for the opening ceremony. And me and I'm not going out there and just doing one somersault. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do the stuff that I used to do, and I could still do it. And someone said, well, you could quite easily come back and do that again. Why don't you? I was like, maybe I can. And then everyone was like, you're crazy, you can't do it. And for me, that was a massive motivation, because I was like, really? Okay, yes, I can, and I'm going to show you. So I was very much like pushed on by people telling me, no, you can't.
And I guess you came to it, your you know, renaissance, your second coming.
Yeah.
You would have been a more sort of self-possessed, confident human being.
It was very different, because going into it and understanding what you're doing with your body, like I said earlier, you know, when you're a child, you kind of just do it. So your coach says, do this, and you just do it. Half the time you don't actually understand what you're doing. A lot of mental blocks are involved, I feel, with like adolescence, and, you know, going into it, understanding as a coach. I had a great relationship with my coaches, and, you know, I couldn't do the numbers that were required as, you know, a younger athlete, but I was very good at delivering when I needed to deliver. So it was a great experience going back and actually having fun with it, and actually having a relationship with my coaches where I could talk to them and understand, and they could break it down in a way that I could understand too. So, yeah, I loved it. My second coming was the most fun I had.
Yeah,
honestly.
and you, as you said, a very consistent performer. You put points on the board. What about representing your country in gymnastics? Tell me about that.
I mean, it was
going to the Olympics.
Yeah, it was an honour. It's like I said, I would never, you know, change anything in the sense of what I've accomplished, and I kind of just take it as the normal, if I'm really honest with you. It's been such a huge part of my life that it's just, oh yeah, you represented your country. Oh yeah, you went to the Olympics. It's normalised for me now, I guess. It sounds really strange, doesn't it? But...
Well, it's spectacular. It's not normal at all. We're not worthy. We can only dream of achieving what you have. Your story's an amazing one. The story continues. You're a broadcaster now. You've had a bit of fun on the telly. You did that celeb dating show.
Yeah.
Did you meet anyone on that show? No such luck.
No such luck. No, I didn't.
Well,
but it was fun to do.
You don't want to date celebrities, I tell you.
It's
the road to ruin.
I know.
What about what's next for you? More stunt double work?
Yeah, potentially.
So you're a stunt double. Is that in TV or movies?
I've done a lot of commercials and things like that. Stunt work on movies is very different, and it requires months of going away on set. And I have a 5-year-old.
So what have you? Could you tell us what you might have done in an advert? You like fallen out of a car or something, or?
Oh, it's made a lot of the time.
Is it brave stuff? You have to be brave, right?
I mean, no, it's a lot of wire work, trampoline work, flips.
wow.
I've done a lot of music videos and things like that. I mean, a lot of the time, you know, I'm stunting for someone, or I might do.
Am I talking to the real Madonna here? The real Gaga?
I wish.
I knew Madonna didn't do that flip. Far too elegant.
Oh, blimey.
Well, she definitely hasn't got a head for heights. Listen, it's been a privilege to have you on the show. How can people find out more about what you do? You're all over social media, aren't you?
Well, Instagram.
You're quite the thing on Instagram. Well, look, will you come back and see us again?
I
It's
would
been a really
love to.
fun conversation, and it's been brilliant to have you on the show.
Thank you for
a
having
British
me.
sporting legend in our midst, live in the studio. My sincere thanks to Lisa Mason, champion gymnast and former Olympian. Actually, not former, you're always an Olympian, it turns out. I was told that by Chris Akabusi, very forcefully. Lots more to come. The Queen of US showbiz and royal reporting, Kinsey Schofield. More trouble for Hollywood actor Alec Baldwin. Plus, the Queen won't meet her brand new granddaughter. We'll get American reaction to that. Plus, more from Christine and Neil Hamilton and Rebecca Jane, and another great British game show. So much to get through. See you shortly.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows. Every day, we ask the questions that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and every weekday we bring you The Briefing live from 9:30 a.m. The stories, analysis, and live debate that you need to hear.
Quite right, Tom, of course.
Was this something that had been considered at all?
Difficult to answer.
Gas-guzzling helicopters circling. Noise is being made here.
Joe Biden walking out. Thank you very much for joining us. Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, Monday to Friday, 9:30 a.m. on GB News.
Join me, Gloria De Piero, Monday to Thursday at noon for The Briefing. We go to the parts of Parliament that you won't see elsewhere. Plus, there's exclusive interviews with MPs from all parties.
But quite often, they paper over the real truth. Why does a working class lad like you join the Tories?
That's a good question.
Don't miss it. Monday to Thursdays at noon on GB News.
So much more to get through in tonight's show. This is Mark Dolan tonight. You're watching us on TV, or you may be listening on DAB+ on the radio. It's time now for US News with the Queen of American showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Hi, Kinsey.
Hi, Mark. Such a good show today. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you. Listen, you're following a very bendy gymnast.
I know. I was just thinking, I feel sorry for the radio listeners because you've had a pretty good-looking show tonight.
They are missing out big time. When was the last time you were upside down?
I don't like to talk about my personal life like that, Mark. You know me.
Good answer.
It's a weekend, so recently.
Well said. Listen, let's talk about more trouble for the Hollywood actor Alec Baldwin.
Oh, this is not looking good. The last time I spoke to you, I don't even think that Helena's family had filed the lawsuit yet. So just a quick update. Helena's family filed a lawsuit against Alec Baldwin after the shooting on the Rust set. And the reason her husband said he did that was because of Alec's arrogant, nasty interview with ABC News with George Stephanopoulos. If they went back-to-back 2 weeks where Alec was just pleading his case on a show called 2020 here, and Helena's husband was absolutely livid over how defiant and arrogant Alec Baldwin was after that interview. So he filed this lawsuit. Update: Alec Baldwin over the last week has said that he is untouchable, that Helena's family cannot sue him over the death of Helena Hutchins. He says that she actually told him where to hold the gun, and he says that she told him to shoot it. So he is trying to put all of the blame back on this deceased woman who is not here to speak for herself and cannot defend herself. And I mean, obviously Helena's family is mad yet again, and Alec is saying that he wanted to continue to shoot the movie and is blaming Helena's family for this lawsuit, saying that they are the reason that they cannot complete Rust. So I just don't know what universe this man lives in, but he sounds despicable. He sounds so, insincere. His PR needs to shut him up immediately.
It seems like it. So for those that don't know, and you'd have to be living under a rock not to be familiar with this story, of course, Kinsey, but Alec Baldwin, famous Hollywood actor, he's on set. It's a Western-style film, and he shoots off this gun whilst filming, except it doesn't have blanks. It's got a real bullet, which kills the director of photography. Two questions for you. If the family of this tragic camera woman, Helena Hutchins, if they sue for money, could it bankrupt Alec Baldwin? And if this whole scandal doesn't bankrupt him, will it kill his career?
I think that there's a good chance of it. We've talked about this before, and I said, no, this guy's a classic. He's iconic, but I can't believe how defiant and cruel he's being in this instance. Have some compassion. Say you're sorry, because during that 2020 interview, he refused to say he was sorry. Here's what happens if her family sues successfully and they win. Alec Baldwin does have to pay money out of his own bank account. He does have to hand over money. But because of the way his contract is written with Rust, he can go back to everybody involved in the Rust production and request that they pay him back for the money that he gives to her family. So I don't think it will bankrupt him, but it will definitely hurt his ego, considering how defiant and cruel he's been with his words over the last few weeks.
The Queen is unlikely to meet her granddaughter Lilibet after Prince Harry is slammed for refusing to travel to Britain. This is not a good look for Harry.
No, it's really not. And, you know, if Prince Harry and Meghan Markle and their children did come to celebrate the life of Prince Philip at the end of this month, I can assure you that the British royal family would go out of their way to make sure that they were safe and secure and that they had all of the security that they needed. So this is just such a silly excuse to not come out and meet the Queen. This is Richard Fitzwilliams who made this statement. He told this to The Sun. I interviewed him actually this week on todiefordaily.com. You can go check that out. He said something similar to me, and he says it, how arrogant and how yucky to release this book during the Queen's Jubilee year that we're expecting at the end of the year. There are concerns about him disrespecting Camilla and, God forbid, disrespecting perhaps the Duchess of Cambridge even. So I do think that this is a mistake for Prince Harry. It's hard to sympathize with him, which is ultimately constantly what Meghan and Harry are trying to get from people. It's hard to sympathize with them when their actions don't match their words and their accusations.
Yes, let's bring my panel in if I can. Kinsey, Rebecca Jane, who is a lawyer and presenter. And we also have politician leader, I'm delighted to say, of UKIP, Neil Hamilton, and broadcaster and writer Christine Hamilton as well. But this is my best bit of the show because we've got two Rebecca Janes. That's my dream.
Hashtag blessed.
Hey. I can feel the ratings just shoot through the roof. But what have they done with Neil Hamilton? There you are. Neil Hamilton, it's official. Rebecca Jane is your stunt double. Christine, if I could start with you on this. Do you think that Prince Harry has a right to official royal security when visiting Britain? Because that's why he's not coming. He's not getting it.
I don't think Prince Harry's got any rights at all, frankly, beyond that of any individual ordinary citizen. He's pulled up his own drawbridge, and frankly, if he never sets foot in this country again, I, for one, won't care. So, I mean, couldn't matter. I really don't mind. But I am furious with him because he is, as you said, messing up the Queen's Jubilee year. But as far as he is concerned, and his wife and his children, I mean, I simply, if I never heard about them again, I would not be sorry.
Can I ask you, Christine, what you think about the emotional impact on the Queen of not meeting the great-granddaughter that's named after her?
Well, I think it's an absolute blooming cheek that she is named after her. That was a personal, private little name that Prince Philip used for her. Nobody else ever uses it. To choose that name was just ridiculous. It was hopping onto a bandwagon. I think she'll get over it, frankly. She's got lots of grandchildren. She'll be fine. She'll be just fine.
Kinsey, do you think it was an outrage calling the child Lilibet, a pet name given by Philip to the Queen?
It's insane. It's a slap in the face. You cannot go sit on Oprah and absolutely destroy that family and accuse them of being racists and then try to rally around and name your child after them so that you can go monetize and commercialize your relationship with this family that you continue to disrespect.
Well, let's move on now and let's keep the panel if we can, because I want to talk about Russophobia. We can all agree, can't we, Kinsey, Christine, Rebecca and Neil, that what Vladimir Putin is doing in Ukraine is appalling, it's reprehensible. Absolute war crimes are playing out on our TV screens as we speak. But I'm a bit worried about Russophobia, where anybody with a Russian surname is now a bad person. Here in the UK, we've got a show called Strictly Come Dancing, in which, of course, celebrities compete in a dancing competition. Well, the stars of that show now, Kinsey, are divided over whether to cancel Russian dancers from the show. Are Russian celebrities being cancelled in America?
No, I thought this story was very interesting because in America, you really only see cancellation in Hollywood if you voted for Donald Trump or if you refused to get the jab. But we're not seeing a lot of people that are being, targeted because of any association with Russia here in Hollywood.
Good. Although I did see a New York restaurant that was going out of business because it had a Russian menu. People are so stupid, aren't they?
They are so stupid. It's true. I'm not going to argue with you there.
It's a shocker. Neil, what do you think about this? We've seen, for example, orchestras not playing Tchaikovsky, a great Russian composer who I think died 150 years ago.
Yeah, I think that's absurd because I'm certainly a great admirer of Russia as a country and a nation. I did Russian in school in my first year at university. Russia has a very black history in many respects, but nobody can deny that the country has produced a huge amount of culture from which we all benefit in the Western world in particular. So I think that's rather an absurd bit of virtue signalling and tokenism. My view is, as I said earlier on, that Russia should be ostracized as a nation, and that includes everybody in it in current circumstances, not because, obviously, everybody in Russia supports Putin or what's happening in the Ukraine, far from it, so far as we can tell, but the whole object of sanctions is to try to put internal pressure on Putin. And in those circumstances, whilst it's right to sanction oligarchs who depend upon political cronyism in Russia for the source of their wealth, for people like the stars of Strictly Come Dancing or whatever, so long as they've not actually said that they support Putin or and what's happening in the Ukraine, I think they're peripheral to the argument and a distraction from what we should really be doing.
Yes, how about this horrific story in Canada, which can no longer pretend Kinsey or Rebecca Jane to be a liberal country? Russian piano prodigy, age 20, was due to make his Canadian debut with the Montreal Symphony Orchestra, but was dropped after people emailed to complain, despite this kid being a critic of the war in Ukraine. Rebecca Jane, is this sort of bonkers virtue signalling gone mad?
Absolutely, it is, yes. I completely disagree with penalising these people. For example, the same thing could happen to us if somebody didn't like what Boris Johnson was doing in a different country. We wouldn't agree with that. We shouldn't be penalised as people, and especially somebody that's actually speaking out about it, because that takes a lot to do for him to do that. So, no, absolutely, it has gone completely crackers. I'm completely against it. But, it's like Neil says, it's a fine line, isn't it, that, Russia needs to feel some sanctions. But at the end of the day, is Putin going to care if Strictly Come Dancing and some poor person is not doing their piano recital? No, he's not.
Kinsey, just with the clock against us, how are the American public reacting to what's happening in Ukraine?
I mean, obviously, we're really concerned about it because it's showing us a complete lack of leadership by our own president. But with the clock against us, I know your birthday's coming up and I have a popper. And so I just wanted to... Happy birthday.
Well, look, I'm so honoured. It's a birthday present every time you're on, let me tell you, Kinsey, and thank you for the kind words. That's right, I will be 48 on the 17th of March. I might have to go to Hollywood and get some plastic surgery and roll back the years.
Come on over.
There you go. And I'll take your spare room when I'm there. Listen, brilliant to have you on the show. Thanks for the birthday wishes. Reporting. You can take a look at Royal exclusive panel as well. Next game show. See you shortly.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube. You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Now, Monty Python is to return to our screens for the first time in 35 years. Python John Cleese said that the series has actually been underestimated by the BBC and under-celebrated. And of course, we've seen, haven't we, high-profile examples of faulty towers being edited or having trigger warnings. So is comedy as good now as it was back in the day? What do you think about that, Neil? Do you think modern comedy's any good?
Well, of course, it's always tempting, isn't it, to think that things were always a lot better when you were young than they are today. To be honest, I don't watch a lot of TV comedy today, so I don't have much standard of comparison. But I do listen to the radio quite a lot, and the comedy slots on the BBC seem to me so spectacularly unfunny. If that's replicated on television, then I certainly think...
Well, I think it is. Yeah. Are you talking about Radio 4 comedies, things like that?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and what's the problem with them? Are they too political?
Well, everything is so woke and politically correct, of course. And also, I think that the number of repeats that are on television in comedy shows tells it all, doesn't it? I mean, you can't get away from Dad's Army, for example, can you? It's a multi-channel now. Well, and of course, it really is a great comedy. There were a lot of other good comedy shows in the 1960s and 70s that can't be broadcast anymore, of course, for obvious reasons. But I do think that so many of the woke comics, we met first at the Edinburgh Festival, the world's biggest stand-up festival. So many dismal shows up there because so much can't be said to make a joke out of it anymore. Having said that, Michael McIntyre came onto our show in Edinburgh back in 2006, and look at where he is now.
Amazing.
And John Bishop as well.
And they are both very funny chaps,
both very funny,
they?
yes.
But
exactly.
one thing, if you look at their work, they're quite naughty.
Yeah.
They are quite naughty, but Neil mentioned Dad's Army. Now, there can't be many people on the planet, maybe this is just my bias, who don't actually find Dad's Army funny. And Don't Tell Him Pike is just one of the funniest lines in history.
Correct.
I wonder how many of the programmes that are being made now will stand that test of time, and I don't think many will. Fawlty Towers is another example. And I think...
And also, perhaps more recently, The Office, which in its own way was also very politically incorrect and probably couldn't be made now.
No,
almost certainly could.
And Ricky Gervais has been very outspoken against the consensus view of what you can and can't say in the media and on stage anymore. And that's we need people who are should be prepared to push out the board. I don't like Frankie Boyle, but he does say some things which are very funny, if in very poor taste.
And you defend his right to make those poor taste jokes, even if they're not to your taste.
Exactly.
Yeah. What do you think, RJ?
I think it is a difficult one, and I think that the woke conversation is one to be had, and I think that the woker we have become, which is not even a word, the least humour that we have.
Yeah.
And I think that we've actually become unfunnier as a nation. I'm using a lot of words that are not actual real words here, but we have become less funny and we've had less humour because we have become more woke.
Now, even in the office, you can't make a joke because you'll get an email from your line manager.
Yeah.
You'll get reported to HR, RJ.
Yeah.
You're a lawyer. You know about these things.
Hey, listen, there is always somebody that's going to be offended somewhere. I say this all the time. You could be Mother Teresa today and you will still get grief on Twitter.
Absolutely.
Crazy. All right, well, look, we try to have some humour on this show, and no one's cancelling us, not anytime soon.
Not
it's
yet.
time now for the Great British Game Show. Well, it is time for the Great British Game Show. The Paralympic Games are coming to a close this weekend, so today's game show is all about guessing the sport that the following terminology belongs to. So the first term, this is right, bonkers sporting expressions. What do they mean? What is a nutmeg? What sport does it relate to?
Football.
It is football. And do you know what a nutmeg is?
Do a heck.
Do I? Heck is like...
What is a nutmeg?
It's when the ball goes through a player's legs.
Why is that a nutmeg?
Yeah, that's a nutmeg. And it's just going through, unfortunately, the legs of the Spurs player,
Is it
which
something to
happens
do
a
with...
lot.
Is it something to do with nuts?
Exactly. Is it something to do with nuts? That's exactly my
Well, I know
question.
it's a lovely ingredient
Way.
in a cheesecake, but that's what a nutmeg looks like, and it's rather skillful, I've got to say. How about this? What's a googly? And remember, it's a family show.
Oh, well, that's cricket, isn't it?
Yes, cricket. That is
Yes,
cricket.
it is cricket. Well done. How about this one? And it's our next expression. Oh, yes, by the way, let me roll back for a second, Zoe. Let me explain what a googly is. A cricket term, a type of deceptive delivery bowled by a right-arm leg spin bowler. There you go. Is that right? Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
It's when you think it's coming one side and it actually comes the other. Something like that.
Like an argument with Neil Hamilton.
I never argue with him.
Never. Don't believe that for a second. How about this? The triple Salchow. That's right.
That sounds like a gymnastic thing.
Or is it wrestling?
Well, it's not. It's actually in a rather colder setting.
Ice
Skiing.
hockey?
Ice skating.
Ice skating.
Yes, a triple Salchow. The Salchow is accomplished with a takeoff from the back inside edge of one foot and a landing on the back outside edge of the opposite foot. It's usually the first jump that skaters learn to double and the first or second to triple. Blimey, they sound very brave, don't they? Like my lovely gymnastic guests earlier. OK, how about this? The salto, the salto.
That's acrobatics.
It is. It's gymnastics. That's right.
Oh,
do you know
sorry.
in particular what it is? What does it do?
No.
It's defined as a flip performed around an imaginary axle. Keep it rolling, Zoe. Keep those words rolling. There you go. And an imaginary axle drawn horizontally across the waist.
Oh.
Let's have another look. Excellent work. I was doing those just before the show, just to get warmed up, just to get ready for Christine.
He's telling the truth. You think he's joking.
That's it. I limber up. I bend over backwards for Christine Hamilton. What's a Gary Owen?
Gary Owen. What sport is Gary Owen?
It's a very masculine sport. I mean, women play it, but you think of men playing it.
Football? Rugby?
No, rugby.
Rugby.
That's right. It is a high kick that's supposed to put the opposing team under pressure. Have either of you or any of you played rugby?
Yes, I've played rugby. I grew up.
Any good?
In
What
Wales.
what were you?
I was
forward?
a prop forward.
Yeah, thought so. I was a natural hooker, but there you go. Each to their own. How about our next expression? Catch a crab. Catch
Rowing.
a crab.
Rowing.
Yes.
Rowing.
Yeah.
Nautical
let's
girl, I
look
know
at
that.
what it is specifically. After you remove your oar from the water, you flip it so it's parallel with the water as you prepare for another stroke. If you fail to remove the oar in time, the blade acts like a brake and the handle whips back towards you. Violent crabs can actually eject a rower from the boats. Violent crabs, that takes me back to my college
I can hear them howling with laughter at the back.
Brilliant stuff. My profound thanks to my brilliant panel. They weren't business class, they were club class. First class, no less. The wonderful Neil and Christine Hamilton, the fabulous Rebecca Jane, who did a double stint here at GB News this weekend. Lovely having all of you. Amazing to have your company. Thanks for the emails and all of your responses on Twitter as well. Stick around because I'm in the hot seat for headliners. See you soon.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather first thing, and it'll be a windy start with showers or longer spells of rain for many of us. Let's take a look at the details. Despite the strong gusty winds and blustery showers across southwest England, it'll be a mild start with temperatures beginning the day at 8 or 9 Celsius. Coming further east, and we have cloudier skies and outbreaks of rain to start the day across London and southeast England, again with a noticeable southerly wind. Many central and eastern areas of Wales may start off Sunday dry and bright. There will be plenty of blustery showers waiting in the wings. Most of the